Good afternoon, everyone. I am Kim Barnes Henson, and I am so happy to be a part as a co-sponsor of this wonderful event representing the Houston Black Real Estate Association. Hey, we got some fans, all right. I am the current president of the Houston Black Real Estate Association. I am also a broker owner of KBH Realty. I wear many hats. I'm also a property tax arbitrator for the state of Texas. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our next panel, our next guest, and he is going to be on the panel by himself, but they saved the best for last. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it. Okay, I am honored to introduce Lawrence Dean, who is the Regional Director for Metro Study here in Houston. Let's welcome Lawrence Dean.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you to all of you who have stayed here and, more importantly, stayed awake until the 3 p.m. time slot, at which they let the guy that has all the bar charts and graphs come and present. And I see no coffee in the room, so I apologize in advance. My name, as they said, is Lawrence Dean, and I'm with Metro Study. Now, what does Metro Study do? Basically, we count houses. We count houses, and then I go around and tell people how many houses we counted. What we really do is we're the premier information and data and consulting firm for the home building, land development, and AD&C banking industries around the production of new housing. I'm the Houston Regional Director, so that means I spend a lot of time focused on our Houston data and working with our Houston home builder, land developer, and bank clients and members. The way we get our data is a very painstaking and I would call it a manual, kind of old-fashioned process. What we do is we send an army of field researchers out with legal plats in hand 4 times a year to drive every block of every section of every new home subdivision in Houston and 42 other markets and count houses. They've got the same plat they used the previous quarter, and if they saw that was a vacant lot, and now that Plantation Homes has started a home on that lot, they'll mark that as the start. All of that data for nearly 1,500 subdivisions in Houston gets rolled into a database that builders, developers, bankers, and even some brokerages subscribe to. Much of this data that I'm going to be presenting, or information I'm going to be presenting, is from our third quarter 2017 field survey. Whoa. Focused mostly on our new home market. Houston remains the second highest volume new home market in the country in terms of annual new home starts. In the 12 months ending in the third quarter of this year, we saw 27,713 new homes started across the Houston area. That puts us continually second only behind Dallas-Fort Worth, and continually puts us in the position of seeing just about the same number of starts overall as Austin and San Antonio combined. In that same period of time, we saw just under 27,000 new home closings. Now, that does not mean that many homes are sitting in inventory and that we're starting or building too many homes. What that actually means is that we're seeing sales increase. This is actually the second quarter in a row, and in Metro Study land, everything happens in quarters. So this is the second quarter in a row in which we've seen starts exceed closings, and that tells us that it's an expansionary market. We're seeing more sales than we did previously. A home closing is an indication of a sale that happened 6 months, 8 months, 9 months ago. So we're seeing an expansionary sales environment in the new home business. Looking at starts volume by quarter, this is the number of new home starts around Houston that started each of the last 4 quarters, and then that same quarter 1 year and 2 years prior to that. Important thing about this is that in the third quarter of 2017, the volume of new home starts in Houston exceeded 8,000 for the first time since kind of the go-go days of $100 a barrel of oil. That's the best starts quarter that we've seen in 2.5 years, so that's definitely an encouraging sign. This looks at the annual number of new home starts and closings in each of the 9 geographic market areas that Metro Study divides the city up in. I won't bore you with the details of which freeway this is north and south of, but I will give you kind of an overall color commentary. The west-southwest area, as Metro Study defines it, continues to be the highest volume new home market in the city. Now, where is that? That's the west side of town, from Interstate 10 to the north, Beltway 8 to the east, kind of the edge of development, let's call it Brookshire or Fulshire, to the west, and Highway 90 to the south. So that's your Katy South, Cinco Ranch, Firethorn, Cross Creek Ranch, places like that. And then the new neighborhoods just south of the Westport Toll Road, Aliana, Longmeadow Farms, Harvest Green, that end of the world. That has continued to be the highest volume new home market in the city for the last 36 months. And what's remarkable about that is that that's where all these upstream energy folks whose employment situation is turbulent, that's where they live, that's where they buy homes. And in spite of issues with kind of the core employment base in that area, it's still the highest volume market in the city because of high quality master plan communities, good schools, good retail, decent commuting corridors. Now, if you drive in to work on I-10 every morning, you'll say decent is probably being charitable, but as good as we have anywhere in Houston. However, it's not the highest growth, or it's not actually even a growing corridor, or growing market area in terms of new home starts. The market areas that have seen year over year the biggest percentage increases in new home starts are far north, and in Metro Studies' definition, that's basically all of Montgomery County is far north at 19.5%, and central, which central makes you think of, Washington Avenue and Heights Boulevard or something like that. Metro Study has a little more generic definition. It's everything inside Beltway 8. But our central area grew by 28% in terms of year-over-year starts volume. We also look at it by county. In other parts of the country that Metro Study serves, because we're in about 42 of the biggest housing markets in the country, in other markets we serve, what county you're in is a big deal. In Houston, it's not much of a big deal, so we don't study our information quite as county relevant as we do in other places, but the vast majority of new home starts in the last 12 months were in Harris County, with Fort Bend and Montgomery falling right behind that. This looks at starts volume by base price band, and so when I say base price, that's before incentives, but it's also before lot premiums, option spend, things like that. The highest percentage, largest percentage of new home starts and closings in the market continues to be in the 200,000 to 300,000 base price band, but the fastest growing percentages were in the 300,000 to 400,000, interestingly enough, year over year. I used to buy land and lots for large production builders. I worked for D.R. Horton. I worked for Cal Atlantic or Island. I liked KB Home so much, I've worked there twice buying land and lots. And so this slide is real interesting to me, and I'm probably the only one in the room who finds it interesting. But this is the lot size. When you deal with production builders in the suburbs, they'll talk about, come see us at Firethorn 60s or Sienna 45s. It's always the width of the lot. This is annual starts and closings by lot size across the Houston market. The largest percentage overall continues to be on 50-foot wide lots. That used to be kind of a starter home market type lot. Not the case, and hasn't been the case probably for a decade now. Now, depending on where that is, that could be an entry-level starter home, or it could be a first-time move-up home within a master plan community. That, as you can see, is the largest percentage, but it's not the fastest growing year over year. We're seeing the most growth in starts on 45-foot wide lots and lots smaller than 45. Virtually every one of our master plan community developer clients has, if they didn't have one already, and most of them didn't have one already, if they didn't have one already, they are rolling out or have just rolled out a 45-foot lot program, a 42-foot lot program, even a 35 or a 40, and they're doing so to get more moderately priced housing, to get more new homes that are sub $325,000 to attract a wider buyer pool than what we've been able to do with ever escalating new home pricing. These next two slides look at the top builders ranked by annual closings. Now, this, I should caution you, combines all of the different builders' brands. So D.R. Horton being the top builder, for instance, you're probably familiar with D.R. Horton, but you've probably also sold some Express homes, maybe even sold a Freedom home or an Emerald home, different brands of D.R. Horton. All of those are going to be rolled up in this number. D.R. Horton, Lennar, Perry, K. of Nanian, and Long Lake continue to be the top 5 highest volume builders in the market. And that's been the case for several years now at this point. However, over the last quarter and over the last 12 months, we've seen significant growth in terms of volume by KB Home and Meritage as well. This looks at the next bucket. That was the top 15. Now this is 16 through 30. The first slide had a lot more of the Houston divisions of big publicly traded companies. The second pot or bucket has some Houston divisions of public companies, but also many more of our local private or regional private builders. Now this map may be a little difficult to read, but this is the top 15 communities ranked by annual starts. I'll speak through the top 5 briefly. At a high level, virtually all of these top 15 are large to medium-sized to very large, highly amenitized master planned communities that offer multiple lot size programs, multiple housing types, multiple price points. Number 1 is, and this has been number 1 now for, 36 months, is Liverstone, that we've already mentioned having some water a few months ago. Liverstone down there in Missouri City, Johnson Development, they've continued to see nearly or greater than 500 new home starts and closings a year for the last 3 years. It's been a very successful community, and that's a community in which we're still selling homes at a higher price than the market overall, and even continued to do so during some of the softer periods after oil's pricing decline. The second highest volume community is also in Fort Bend County, Aliana, up there off the Grand Parkway and West Airport, West Belfort. Done a significant effort with 449 annual starts. The third highest volume community is Bridgeland, up in the basically 290 and Grand Parkway area. Bridgeland is just about geographically or physically just about the largest community in Houston right now. At total build out, it will be nearly 12,000 acres, and they've at most developed about 2,000 acres of it. So that's a community that will be very active and that you'll be hopefully selling homes in for a great number of years to go. But they're consistently and now at 400 plus new home starts a year. Number 4 is back down to Fort Bend County, but kind of the northernmost part of it, Cross Creek Ranch out there off of 1093 in the West Park Toll Road, another Johnson community with 390 starts. And then number 5, Sienna Plantation, takes us back to where we started with the Johnson and Development, really Toll Brothers, Sienna South component down at the end of Sienna Parkway, generating at this point 359 starts a year, so significant volume. This map looks at, again, the next bucket. You'll see a theme here. Top 15, next 15. This is the last of those. This looks at the next bucket, 16 through 30, of communities ranked by annual starts. This is a little bit, you'll see that this is a little bit more of a diversity geographically, moving back. This is pretty much on the west southwest, west northwest side of town, maybe the north, maybe the north side of town. This is much more broadly spread all across the southeast, east, and northeast area. This bucket is also a mix of larger, high amenity master plan communities, as well as smaller builder-developed communities that may not offer as broad a product diversity or price diversity, but are still doing tremendous overall volumes because they're selling very competitively priced homes. Great example is number 16 there on the east side of the map, right above the word 3Q 2017. I guess that's a number, not a word, but right above that. Rancho Verde out there on the east side of town off of Wallaceville Road, just outside Beltway 8, kind of in Channelview. That's a D.R. Horton Express community. They probably offer 8 different floor plans at the most, and started 233 homes, and those are sales. This is not inventory getting ahead of themselves. They've probably sold virtually all of those homes as well. Just a tremendous volume of activity because they're hitting a competitive price point. Now, this is a slide that gets into a little more detail about those top 15 communities as well, and a little bit of information about really when they'll build out. Our builder and developer clients always want to know when subdivision X and subdivision Y close to them are going to build out, because then they'll be able to get that demand once those build out. So looking at the far right column over here, a couple of these communities will be wrapped up, fine done fairly soon. Cypress Creek Lakes up near Bridgeland, up off North Fry Road, being one of them. It just has a handful of months left, and that's a community that's been around for probably a decade. Another example being Imperial Oaks up there east of the Woodlands off of Grayford Road, with less than a year's life remaining. So several key communities reaching build-out. Now, everybody else here has talked a lot about Harvey, and I haven't. A few notes about Harvey, though. Our home builder clients have continually reported that they obviously lost traffic and lost sales that last week of August and really for the first 2 weeks of September. Then very shortly after that, they began to see traffic get back to normal. They really didn't report to us until really into October that they were seeing many Harvey-related buyers making up that traffic. Prior to October, it was mostly people that I would call kind of Harvey agnostic. Their house didn't flood in Harvey. They were looking to buy a new house anyway. As soon as the roads cleared, they moved forward and kept looking at buying a new house. Once October rolled around, builders began to really report to us that they were seeing Harvey buyers. Most of those buyers, unfortunately, were folks that were dealing with issues like that we've been talking about, the rest of the panels have been talking about today, dealing with getting payments from flood insurance, getting some kind of funding if they didn't have flood insurance, what they do with their current home. And so many of them, while they may wish to buy a new home, just aren't there yet. However, builders did report that some percentage of buyers, especially older kind of empty nester buyers that were a little more financially secure, did in the October time frame begin to start moving forward with buying new homes because they were more able to do so than younger buyers. We don't expect, because of all of the logistical issues that we've discussed earlier today, we at Metro Study don't really expect, we're not advising our builder clients to expect to see any meaningful bump in new home sales from people who were affected by Harvey until probably the first quarter of 2018. People are still dealing with their day-to-day temporary housing, myself included, by the way. So, and I start all speeches lately with this, and I failed to do so. So I live in the Meyerland area as well. I don't know what that says, that's 2 noted housing experts who today have said they live in the Meyerland area and have had their houses flood. Really smart. But our house, of course, flooded. My wife and I decided to buy a 29-foot travel trailer, which we've been living in the driveway, with myself, my 4.5-year-old little boy, what is she now, 4-month-old, who was 3 weeks old at the time of Harvey, a 50-pound pit bull, and my wife, who is honest to God, a licensed psychotherapist and likes to practice her techniques on me at night. So I'm not telling y'all that to elicit sympathy or empathy or any other pathies, but more to apologize in advance if this presentation just goes off the rails and I start speaking gibberish, because there's not a lot of sleep going on in the party trailer, as you can imagine. So I usually start every presentation off with that because it could go off the rails at any time. I might fall asleep standing up here. I'm just saying. But back to Harvey. One question that a lot of Wall Street analysts and folks that support the funding, I guess, of development and new home building called Metro Study almost immediately after Harvey, wanting to know about all of the devastation to new home communities. And really, we've ascertained that Harvey, for better or worse, was by and large a resale market phenomenon. Metro Study drove, as we do every quarter, this past quarter we drove 1,482 subdivisions across the Houston area. 17 of them had Harvey-related flooding damage. And only one of those, way down in Lake Jackson, in Litchwood, next to Lake Jackson, had significant flooding damage, where a large number of homes flooded. Most of them had just a handful of homes, of new homes, seeing any flooding damage. An informal poll of the top, and so that's what this map represents, by the way. Sorry, that's the location of those 17 communities, 17 subdivisions. An informal poll of the top 30 largest builders from the charts previously, right after Harvey, indicated that for most of them, anywhere between 0% and 4% of their homes in inventory, so that's homes under construction, model homes, finished vacant homes, saw any damage, between 0 and 4%. Most of them came out fairly unscathed. Unfortunately, it was folks living in more established neighborhoods that saw the brunt of it. Oh. One thing that we also track at Metro Study, switching gears a little bit, is inventory of homes, especially inventory of finished vacant homes. In Metro Study's data analysis, we look at the months of supply of finished vacant complete homes and determine whether we're in an over-inventoried, under-inventoried, or about right market. Coming out of oil's pricing downturn, we spent multiple quarters in a not just about right market. We had a little too much inventory, especially at the upper price points and especially on the north side of town. That's really beginning to improve. This looks at the overall number and, more importantly, the months of supply of finished vacant home and new home inventory across all of the different price bands. We see 3 months of supply and below as being optimal to equilibrium months of supply conditions for finished vacant. At this point, for all price bands 500,000 and above, we're below that 3 months of supply. And at the 500,000 to 600,000 price band, we're just barely above it at 3.3 months of supply. That's an improving condition over this time last year. Oh. We also like to look at this in terms of the different geographic market areas. Most important here again is the months of supply number. This quarter, third quarter 17, is the first quarter in 36 months that none of the 9 market areas had an in excess of equilibrium months of supply of finished vacant homes. So that's a positive thing. We're encouraged by that. Looking at pricing, this graph or this chart looks at the percentage of all new home closings by base price band for this year and every year for the last 11. Cutting kind of to the chase, in 2006, 67% of all new home closings were under $200,000. Base priced under $200,000. Fast forward to today, and that's 15%. That's the black line that's headed precipitously down. As it relates to our home builder members, our home builder clients, they're obviously very concerned about this because they're losing first-time home buyer opportunities to the resale market or to not buying homes at all. Some of that demand is going to the 2 to 3 and even 3 to 400,000 price bands, but not as much as they'd like. That kind of ties back to why there's so much interest in smaller lots, more moderately priced homes. Oh, and speaking of lots, we look at lot inventory characteristics as well. You never want to be in a market where there's too many lots, and you never want to be in a market where there's too few lots, because that can result in increased home prices. In the last 12 months, we basically completed or added to the market's inventory just about as many new lots as we started new homes. In the last 12 months, we started 27,713 new homes, and we delivered, or for the, as the appraiser mentioned earlier, the engineers, as the engineers would say, we saw 27,798 new lots reach substantial completion. They're done. You can now build a house on them. So that's a pretty equilibrium condition. That's positive. we're at a 19.4 months of supply of vacant developed lots, basically finished lots you could go build a house on today. That's below the 20 to 24 months of supply equilibrium that Metro Study identifies for Houston, and that represents 44,000 and change vacant lots. That sounds like a bunch. The challenge, if you're Joe Home Builder, is that virtually all of those lots and all of those lots that you'd actually want are spoken for. They're either owned by a home builder or under control by a home builder. So we definitely are not in a market with excess capacity of lots. This is a little more color commentary on that vacant developed lot number. We're well below equilibrium conditions for all lot sizes under 70 feet wide. So basically all lot sizes that support moderately priced and mid-priced housing, generally speaking, are below equilibrium. And then spreading that across the different market areas around town, only the far north, only Montgomery County, is above equilibrium in terms of vacant developed lots. So what does Metro Study think is going to happen the rest of this year and next year? We project that when the 12 months of calendar 2017 end, which I know that's really going on off on a limb, you know, it's 34 days from now or something like that, so it's really getting the crystal ball out there. But we project that at the end of the year, we will have seen about 27,450 new home starts in Houston. That's actually an increased forecast over what we thought 2017 was going to see even 180 days ago, 120 days ago. And that's based on the continued strength of the volume of new home starts in the third quarter and second quarter of the year. Builders and developers are doing a better job than they were 18 months ago at satisfying demand for more moderately priced homes, and that's really showing in terms of the volume of new homes that we're selling and new homes that we're starting. In 2018, we had projected a larger increase. We were hoping that we'd get above 28,000 for the first time in several years. We're still waiting for that miracle of $60 a barrel oil, and I think we'll probably be waiting for that this time next year as well. So because there's not that kind of external factor that will buoy our economy and buoy our local situation, we think we'll see just right around 28,000, maybe a little less new home starts over the course of 2018. Now, we have slowed down new home closings, both for 17 and 18, not because we think a lot of homes are going to get sat in inventory, but because guys like me who are having to rebuild our houses are taking all the drywall. I had lunch with a operations leader for a sizable private home builder who builds about 400 houses a year in Houston. He asked me how my rebuild was going, and I, innocently enough, told him, well, yeah, we got drywall in last week. He said, you son of a, because they, as a big production builder, can't get drywallers and can't get sheetrockers. And that's the most acute issue in the supply chain and in the trade base for building new homes, but there's going to be others. If you just think about anything in your own personal home that's 4 feet from the floor up 4 feet, we're rebuilding a bunch of all those things in a bunch of houses. So all of those things are going to be more difficult for even high volume production builders to be able to get going and get done and get these homes closed. So builders talk in terms of cycle times. What that means for y'all is the difficult conversation you have to have with your new home buyer clients to say, yeah, your lease is up in March, and the house was supposed to be done in February, and now it's going to be done in June. Cycle times, the amount of time it takes to build a house, we expect to see continue to be expanded by as much as 45 to 60 days, probably through the remainder of 2018. We just have too many homes across the Houston area that have to be rebuilt and too much competition for trades and materials. So expect delays in terms of new home construction times for at least the next year plus. So as Metro Study has said for 40 plus years, now you know. I thank you all very much, and I'd love to answer any questions.
Lauren, since I have the mic, thanks again for the presentation. How could we get a hold of this presentation, if it's possible?
I'll be glad to share it with y'all. Y'all have got it, and so that is just fine. I'm glad to share it with y'all.
Thank you.
Hi, Lawrence. Just a quick question. Does Metro Study keep statistics on any of the smaller private builders?
We do. The only area that our statistics get a little bit fuzzy is if it's a builder that does kind of onesie, twosie, in town, in areas that there's not much in-town activity going on in. We drive Western University Place, Golden Oaks, Oak Forest, the Heights, Bel Air. We drive a lot of those areas like they're a new home subdivision, so we'll capture every new home. But if it's somebody that builds a house, I don't know, in a random part of town that there's not much activity going on, we may not track them. But yeah, we track 125, 130 different builders in any given quarter. So yes,